Hello and welcome to the Chordious 2.0 Scale Finder tutorial. In this video I'll be going through all of the features and options available to you in the Chordious Scale Finder. This tutorial assumes you've already installed Chordious 2.0. And if you haven't already, go ahead and check out the Chordious 2.0 installation tutorial video. Without further ado, let's get started. So I have Chordious running here. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Scale Finder button here. Go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. So we have here at the very top, we have your primary options you're going to be picking when you're looking for a scale pattern. You have the instrument that you'd like to use. And you see there's a bunch of instruments here built into Chordious. The tuning for that instrument, various tunings to choose from. The note that you're looking for, and the type of scale that you're looking for. And there's a bunch of scales built in to Chordious here. It's important to note that, much like the chord finder, Chordious doesn't actually save or have a database of all these scale patterns. Just like the chord finder, Chordious will take the scale you specify and the instrument and the tuning and search over the fretboard to find those scale patterns. So in that way, these are the built-in instruments and tunings that are available. As you can see, if I pick, say, guitar, the tunings change here and I can pick a different tuning. We're not limited to just the instruments and tunings that come built into Chordious. There's a edit button here, and we'll go over that in an advanced tutorial, how you can add custom instruments and tunings. And then over here you can also add custom scales. So if there's a scale pattern that's not here that you want to be able to search for, you can go ahead and specify that, and we'll talk about that in a later tutorial. So let's go ahead, and for the purpose of this, we're going to set it to ukulele and reentrance C. And we're looking at a C major scale. So if I go ahead and hit search down here at the bottom, so here we have two scale patterns for playing a C major scale on two different places in the fretboard. Now, when we search, we're controlling our search based on the options here on the left hand side. So let's go ahead and go through what these options mean. So here, the number of frets, that's simply the number of frets that are appearing in the diagram. So you see there's 5 and there's 5 here. If we switch that to, say, 4 and do another search, you can see that it shrunk it down, and in this case you can see now that we can't see that first fret and the nut. It went ahead and added a 2 there to show that this is starting on the second fret. Okay, so I'm going to set that back to 5. Another thing to note is that you don't always have to come down here and click on the search button. If you press the F5 key on your keyboard, that will execute the search. So if you want, you can keep one hand on the keyboard ready to hit F5, and then use the other hand with your mouse to go navigate around, and it's a lot easier than going back and forth. So I'm going to hit F5 on my keyboard, and, well, try that again. There we go. So now it's searched for giving back the 5 frets. The next option here is the max fret, and that's just saying how far up the neck you want to look. So in this case it's defaulting to 12. If I wanted to, I could say, hey, I don't want to go higher than the 3rd fret. So if I search, now I only see 1, because that other diagram, that other scale pattern went past the 3rd fret. So this is going to keep me right here at the bottom of the neck, right at the nut. Let's set that back to 12. And the next numerical option here is your reach. So what I'm saying here is how many frets I'm willing to stretch across. So I'm saying I'm willing to stretch across 4 frets to play the scale. So you can see that's the maximum this will take. If I set this to 5, now you can see there's a bunch more scales that I can play simply by saying that I'm willing to reach down 1 more fret. Okay. And yeah, so the next couple options here, so I'm going to set this back to 4. We have allowing open and allow muted strings. So in this case you can see each one of these By default, they're both checked because we have some open strings being played here. If I uncheck that and search, right, it's only going to show me diagrams that are that allow muted, or sorry, that don't have open strings, so it's a full pattern. This would be a movable scale that you can move around pretty easily. If I wanted to, let's say I set this back to 5, so I get more results. Okay, so some of these, like this scale here, isn't playing this string. So technically that string is not being played. So if you wanted to make sure that every string is in the scale, I check this, and then I search. And now you can see in all these scale patterns that you're playing every string. There's no gaps on the ends where strings are not being played. So you can use these options to change what kind of scales you're looking for. I'll set these back to where they were. The next set of options are just style options. So you can see by default, add title is off. If I go ahead and hit add title and search, then it's going to add C major at the top here based on the scale. By default, it's off. So, but if you want to do that, the next option here is mirror results. That's basically saying if you want to find quote-unquote left-handed scale patterns, you can check this and it will basically mirror it. So if you look at these two options here and do another search, you'll see now it's mirrored to the other side, assuming that the person is, instead of stringing, in this case, GCEA from left to right, they're going GCEA from right to left. I'm going to uncheck both of those. And the last option here is the root notes. So you can see the root notes here, these C notes in the C major scale, appear as diamonds. If I go ahead and uncheck that, then you can see, now they won't be called out as being root notes. So this is just stylistically if you want to call them out as being different because they're root notes. By the default styling in Chordious will be to change root notes to look like diamonds, but you can change that, and that'll be an advanced tutorial where I talk about all the different styling options in Chordious. And you could say root notes are, say, all red, and it would be red instead of a diamond, or a red diamond. You can do whatever you want. The last option here is the mark text. So by default, you can see there's no text on these marks, and so you can specify that you want to show the notes. So in the C major scale, doing show both here, there we see all the notes there being put on the marks. If we switch to a different scale, let's say we do a G major scale, let's see what that looks like. So here's a G major scale that meets these parameters, and if we look, this right here, which would be a F sharp note, in the G major scale, Chordious isn't smart enough to know whether or not it should be an F sharp or a G flat. So in this case I have show both shown, which is showing an F sharp and G flat, which is kind of hard to see because the text is white. But if I go ahead and set that to prefer flats or sharps, I can do prefer flats, and that shows it as the G flat, or I can do prefer sharps and search like that. So there's the F sharp. So that's it for these options on the side. As you can see, you can change the note and the scale. If I wanted to find a G blues scale here, there's a G blues scale. So you can pick exactly what you want to look for, pick a different instrument, find scales for other instruments. It's really up to you. At the end of the day, if you want to save these to a collection so you can modify them later or print them out or add them to whatever you're working on, so let's say I do C major again, and I'm going to take off the root notes and leave these the way they are and search. Okay, so here's a C major. I want root notes. Okay, so I might say, okay, here's a C major scale. You can select one, you can select both. It's really up to you, and you can decide if you want to save them. So you select them here, click Save Select at the bottom. By default, to try to put it into a new collection name, or you can look at previous collections. You can see I already have collections made from diagrams I saved from the Chord Finder tutorial and the Quick Start tutorial. So if I go ahead and call this Scale Finder tutorial, I can go ahead and save that. So I've saved that C major. And I can go, and let's say I wanted to find a G major scale and search. So here's the G major scale, and I can decide to go save selected here, and it defaults to the last one I chose, which was the scale finder. So I can go ahead and pick scale finder tutorial again and hit OK, or I can type in an entirely different name if I want to save it to a different collection. I'm just going to save that there. So, and we'll go over in a later tutorial how to access your collections in your library to see all these diagrams that you've saved off. The final thing here is we have these two buttons here having to do with your defaults. So as you can see, the default when we started was to do an ukulele and reentrant C tuning with the C major scale. If I change this, say I'm looking for, you know, G major scale on a guitar in standard tuning, if I exit out of the scale finder, it's not going to remember that I've set these settings and these options on the side, right? If I decide I want to not have the root notes, for example. Okay, these are my preferences. It's not going to save these. So if I close this and then reopen the scale finder, you'll see that I'm back with the reentrant C ukulele. So if I'm say a guitar player and I want to set that to my standard, then I can do that, and I can do set as defaults, and it'll ask you, it'll confirm if you want to set it. You can say yes here. So now if I go ahead and exit and open the scale finder again, you'll see that it remembered that I wanted to have standard guitar tuning. It also applies to these options here, so I could say that's, if I wanted to go 1, well, 3, 3, 3, I can do set as defaults. If I reset the defaults, this will set it back to whatever my defaults were before. So I set it to guitar standard with those numbers. If I reset the defaults and click yes, see, it returns those back to the values they were before. That's useful if you don't want to have to exit out. I mean, otherwise you'd have to exit out of the scale finder and reopen it to reset back to what your default settings were, which this is just a quicker way of doing that. But if I did 3, 3, 3, then I can do set as defaults. And when I close this and go back up, you can see it saved that, and I can change this to whatever I want and do reset the defaults and go back to what my preferences were. If for whatever reason you get these all messed up and you decide that you want to go back to just the way Chordious was when you first started using Chordious, you can exit out of the scale finder, and really quickly you can go under options, under finders, and you reset scale finder defaults. If I click on that and click yes and OK, now when I go to the scale finder, here we are back to those original settings. So in case you ever get so far messed up and you can't get results anymore. The last thing to note is if you try to search for something impossible, so if I say 2 frets, let's say, so I'm trying to find a C major scale that only uses 2 frets, then it's going to throw up an error saying, hey, like that doesn't exist on a ukulele with the reentrant C tuning. It couldn't find a scale pattern that would actually fit and just have have a max reach of 2 and only be fit onto 2 frets. So so it is possible to search for things that don't exist. Because like I said, Chordious doesn't have a database, so it's just going to try and see what happens based on the values you give it. So that's it for the Scale Finder tutorial. That covers all the basic options, and stay tuned for future videos, and we can get into some of the more interesting things. I know people want to see whether or not what it takes to add your own favorite instruments and your own tunings, and maybe even adding your own scales. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below, or check out the Chordious website, and thank you for watching.